Hi Corrado, welcome to BizTalk, and hope you had a very good day and continue to have a very good day. So, we go straight to the point. BizTalk, as you perfectly know, we invite founders and startups around the world to talk about their business. We run for 30 minutes pitching, but as we already talked, it's a very colloquial pitching. So what I want to start, I would like to start with you, who you are, and presenting yourself and founders, if there are any others with you. And after we move straight to the business, talk about your business model, concept behind, and so on. Please.
Thanks, Max. Great to be here. So my name is Corrado Accardi, and I'm the CFO and co-founder of U2K International. So my background, I'm Italian, been in London for almost 20 years now, and I'm a chartered engineer by background. And but then after an executive MBA, I moved more to the business side of management. So U2K is a full stack business in electric mobility. So what we do is a vertical where we have the electric Tuk Tuks, so the three-wheelers, auto rickshaws that are present in more than 40 countries, mainly developing countries. We do the recharging infrastructure, and we have the software to make everything work together seamlessly. So the whole business model was born out of a conversation that our CEO, Ermanno Zampariolo, who's a development economist with a background in energy, had with a minister in Sri Lanka, where it came out that Sri Lanka is a small country with 21 million people and over 1 million tuk-tuks. They had an hemorrhage every year of about $1 billion to import fuel and parts for a tuk-tuk alone. And so clearly this was a huge problem for them. So when Ermanno came back to Europe, he spoke to two of his friends who then became the second and third co-founder. And Enrico Carlin, who's a telecommunications and a technologist guru with experience worldwide from renewables to telecoms, and with Giuseppe Guerra, who's the chief engineer, and he was a race engineer for a Ducati Superbikes team. And he's brought a lot of different concepts for two wheels and three wheels to the market from concepts. And so what the team came up with was this, as I said, full stack solution to resolve the catch-22 of electric mobility, where normally you have a manufacturer of vehicles, electric vehicles, who doesn't install the charging infrastructure. You have a manufacturer and operator of the charging infrastructure who doesn't do the vehicles. And generally, these two players, they talk to each other, but they act according to different timescales. And especially, they have to rely on each other to make their business model work. And that becomes an issue, and the one that in many cases makes electric mobility fail. So by having a different approach where we are the single point of sale and operations for the whole thing, clearly makes complete sense. And just to finish this quick overview, we are not an industrial manufacturer. So we redesigned the electric tuk-tuk to maintain, at least initially, the traditional looks. We outsource the production to existing manufacturers. The charging stations are produced by our industrial partner, which is an Italian company in electrics and electronic components. and so they're optimized for the vehicles.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's very clear picture. When it comes to the manufacturing, the industrial partner is Italian, but where the Tuk Tuk is made? In Italy
So
or
the Tuk,
Lanka?
no, so the Tuk Tuks, it will depend really on the success and also on the scale that we can achieve over time. So initially, first of all, probably what I should mention is we decided to start from Sri Lanka, but the idea is clearly to scale up as quickly as possible to other geographies, including India and Bangladesh and a number of other countries, including in Africa, where there are lots of tuk-tuks. And so initially, the numbers that we expect in the first year are not going to be massive. And so there are some small manufacturers in Sri Lanka that we could use for the initial production. And then we would assemble the vehicles with the electric components and electronic components to then sell them. When scale goes beyond what the local producers can do, then there are some manufacturers that we have already identified in both China and India that can take over, and they can scale up the production quite indefinitely in a short time, and shouldn't really represent a problem for scaling up the production to enter in different countries.
So if I understood well, you provide electric and of course the know-how, and partnering worldwide with the best, let's say, producers. It can be in India, can be in Sri Lanka, Italy, wherever you're going to. I'm sure Italy not, because we don't have Tuk Tuk in Italy, but wherever Tuk Tuk is used.
Well, Italy will be a market. Italy or the Greek islands or the Balearics.
Yeah.
So where there are small islands, in many cases, there is a problem with the fuel supply there, and or even just with the pollution that's generated by combustion engine vehicles. And so there is a market that can definitely be exploited, in some cases created, in others, let's say, built on top of what's already there. Because, for example, you have the case of Lisbon, where tuk-tuks are now something which is part of the Portuguese experience in Lisbon. And because of their versatility, the fact that they can really climb everywhere, and they are cheap to run, and therefore also for tourists, they can be an easy alternative to hiring a car, especially in hot climates. They are quite well open and can make a different experience also for a tourist.
Absolutely. You can create another market for
Totally.
sure. And when it comes to, can we talk a little bit about the business model behind, and also because I can see a very, very impact. A little bit more about this circular economy that you are creating as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the let's say the revenue model is based on two main sources of revenue. One is the one-off of the sale of the vehicles, because what we want is for the drivers to own their vehicles, and so they will eventually, from the operating expenses savings, they will eventually repay capital and interest, and on top of that have also a higher disposable income from basically day one. And to do that, what we have is the second revenue stream, which is the recurring revenues, which will come from selling the service to the drivers for the duration of the life of the vehicle. So what they will have will be software that will tying the vehicle also to the charging infrastructure. And so they will be able to recharge their vehicles unlimited times during the day for unlimited energy. There is a limit to how much they can use even in a very successful day of work. But what will happen will be that by having this recurring charge, we can afford to build a completely new recharging infrastructure on the sides of the roads. And so by doing that, having columns that can recharge very quickly the vehicles, effectively, we can ease all the issues with the range anxiety, the problem with the fear of autonomy, which might be insufficient, or the fact that some of the people that have started this without looking at the charging infrastructure, they either have to rely on swappable batteries, but these are batteries that are 25 kilos in weight for a module. So for someone to have to swap them, it's quite an intense physical work. And other producers, yeah.
It comes to swap, because I was reading in China, there are a couple of startups that are trying exactly to swap batteries. And they think in China can work well. What do you think?
Look, our business model initially was about swapping, and we decided to change it just over a year and a half ago, because there are different electrochemistries in the batteries. So clearly nobody uses anymore the lead-based batteries, which are extremely polluting. Then there was a time of the so-called NMCs, so the nickel, manganese, and cobalt batteries, which had, say, about 1,000 life cycles of recharging. So in 3 years, they could not be used anymore on a vehicle. Yes, they could still be used for, let's say, second life, like, for example, buffering the grids to avoid the peaks and troughs in how the power is supplied. But they had an intense capex for the drivers. With the advent of the LFP, so let's say the lithium-based ones, and iron and phosphates, which are the ones that we will use initially, you enter in a completely different ballgame, because now those batteries have a price which is very well comparable to the NMCs, and they can be recharged between 3,000 and 5,000 times. So we're talking of the duration of the life of the vehicle covered by one set of batteries, which means no capex to be spent again by the driver, but also from an environmental perspective, you don't have batteries that need to be disposed of. And they still have the second life that I was mentioning before. So when we realized that LFPs, and the LFPs, they can also be recharged in less than half an hour. So whereas with the NMCs, you had 5 or 6 hours recharging time, that meant that really the only way was to leave them charging while the vehicle went around. And so you had a need for 2 sets of batteries. With the LFPs, having half an hour and you can clip in and clip out. So for example, if the driver on the side of the street is recharging the battery and all of a sudden a customer comes up, it doesn't need to miss out on the opportunity to make a fare. He can just clip out, take the customer wherever he needs to go, and then restart, keep on charging somewhere else. And that ties in anyway with the fighter drivers. They will tend to stop during the day. They just don't go around and out without stop. So let's say that it makes sense. And from an environmental and from also a capex perspective, moving to rechargeable batteries, it's frankly better. Consider that for us, a pod as a charging station can cost about $3,000 to install, and that at regime, it will be able to serve 5 to 40 vehicles every day, including also third-party vehicles. So an electric car, we will be able to supply energy to that car. If you have to create the swapping battery stations, the capex for those ones, considering that it will be much bulkier, they will require almost a substation type of energy supply, and they will need to have as many batteries as there are vehicles going around. And so each of those cupboards on the side of the roads might cost between $15,000 and $20,000 easily. So there are a number of reasons for which we said it's better to move to recharging rather than swapping.
I mean, I believe technology we have a lot.
Although probably there is one thing, it will depend on some geographies. In countries, for example, like Indonesia, where you can have more regular blackouts, it might actually be sensible to talk with the national grid operators to say, well, actually, the swapping batteries there might make sense because they could be used also to ease the peaks and troughs in the power demand during the day. So it could be a dual service. But from the vehicles themselves, we don't think there is a doubt that swappable batteries will become obsolete quite soon.
Extremely clear. Can we talk a little bit about the infrastructure, because that's a very topic point. We talk a lot about renewables. We talk a lot about impact, which is I'm extremely big fan of anything is sustainable and impact. But when it comes to infrastructure, we are not still there. I mean, we are not yet there. We need to do a lot. How do you deal with all the infrastructure you need to create, a massive adoption? Because this is what you need anyway.
Yes. So that is quite the question about the whole thing. Now, going with smaller pods that can recharge 2 vehicles for each of them, we have a lower power supply demand for every pod. So it becomes quite easy to connect them on the side of the streets, plenty of them, because they will go over different substations in the existing network. So if we went for the, let's say, petrol station type of approach, where you have 15 or 20 of these pumps for the energy, then yes, you'd have a problem, because it would be an extremely concentrated, very high demand for energy, and so that would be a drag on the grid itself. And on top of that, you'd have a problem that the vehicles, you couldn't have many of these petrol station type installations, and so whereas we can have a charging station, say, every few hundred meters, with the petrol stations, it would probably be much more, because they would be also very expensive to build. And so for someone that that's running out of charge, it would be difficult to reach really the individual petrol stations. I'm calling petrol stations as what we have with several pumps and several vehicles that can be recharged at the same time. From a quality of the energy perspective, there is also the fact that we do not propose to move away from fossil fuels to fossil fuel generated energy. So if we were moving from oil to coal, it couldn't really do much good anyway. Yes, it would be more efficient, but still wouldn't be resolving the issues. So in a place like Sri Lanka, but this is something that's happening more and more in several of the developing countries, there is a higher percentage of energy produced from renewable sources. So in the case of Sri Lanka, about 20 to 30% of energy is from hydropower, and about 10 to 15% at the moment is generated with photovoltaic. Solar, wind is still limited. But when you have over a third of your overall energy that's supplied from renewable sources, then you can also say, fine, we can pick and choose and decide to offer our energy basically only from the renewable sources.
Great. I think it's pretty clear when it comes to operations. Can just a little bit about your economics? When it comes to what are the expected income for the next 3-5 years, and also if you are raising, because not all the startup coming to talk to us, they are raising funds. Someone does, someone doesn't. In case of U2K, if you are raising fund now, and if how much and how, and what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, so we are raising, definitely. At the moment, we raised in the past about $400,000, which brought us to where we are now. So we have the prototype of the vehicle, we have the complete charging station, we have an MVP for the software, both to operate the vehicle, electrics and electronics, and to connect it to the charging stations. We have a country director already identified in Sri Lanka. So now what we need the $1 million for is the seed capital to actually start on the ground. So with that money, we will purchase the first 40 vehicles, which will activate the cycle where we sell the vehicles, and so we can order another 40 or 45, and then after 2 months we sell them again, and so we can order more, and so on, and install the first 30 stations at least on the side of the street, and complete the software and generally set up the operations in the assembly line in Sri Lanka. Then the idea is that 8 months and 1 year after we raised and we started and we have the vehicles on the roads and we are showing that the system works, then we will probably go for a Series A. So for the growth capital, and that will probably be a much higher fundraising in the order of over $10 million, and to really expand as explosively as we can, basically to cater for the fact that in Sri Lanka, for example, about 300,000 of the oldest vehicles out of 1 million have been banned years ago because they are too polluting. And so there is an immediate urgent demand from the market to come up with a solution to replace those vehicles. Now, the important thing to mention is that the way that we structure the business is that the drivers will not have to pay upfront to get a new vehicle. So initially, our targets are the existing drivers with the oldest vehicles. So when they will come to us, they will order a new vehicle. When the vehicle is ready for delivery, they will activate the loan with a bank or with a microcredit institution. So the vehicle will become their own. We will take their old vehicle and we will get it dismantled, recycled, whatever can be recycled, but that vehicle will never come back on the road. So we don't want to give an electric vehicle to someone and then have the old vehicle polluting that's either reused in the same country or moved to another one. And so by having that, the drivers will not have to pay anything up front to get the new vehicle, which will, as I said before, will repay itself from the savings, and also will attract more clientele generally. New vehicle versus a 15, 20-year-old one. So they will be able really to have a much better lifestyle for themselves.
And that's great. Old vehicles should be all removed completely. This is the only way we can move on.
Totally.
And replace with electric one. And U2K is based where? In UK?
In UK, so the company has been incorporated here, and although I have to admit that at this moment in time, because we are so heavily on the impact side in electric mobility, and considering how our focus, at least initially, is in South Asia, it might be that the lead investor might not be a European-based one. So it's not that we are following the money in this case, but realistically, if it comes out that the bulk of the money will come, for example, from a Singapore-based impact fund, we might have to move the main operations to Singapore and keep the UK as a subsidiary of that. So at the moment, it will really depend on who the lead investor will be.
I mean, based on the model and where the model will be tested, which is Sri Lanka, you know, what is the market, the current market is looking for Sri Lanka are mainly investors based in Japan, South Korea, and Hong Kong, Singapore, and Australia. That's proximity, okay? They are very close, they are very active actually, they are very, very active in Asia. Probably less China. China is more related to China by itself, but you know, it's absolutely, I mean, you are not following the money, but you need to follow the market for sure. So,
effectively, yes. Let's say that for a British-based investor, Sri Lanka offers the fact that it operates on English law. So it is very simple for someone originating from the UK to work with the Sri Lankan legal framework because it's the same. It's not that they implemented a similar one. They simply took what was from the colonial times, what was the mother land.
Yeah, I mean, England had been everywhere. I mean, this is my last question, and after, if you want to add something more, please do it. In terms of scaling, what's going to be the next? Sri Lanka, I understand, is the beta. You're testing in Sri Lanka, and after?
So we can be opportunistic. And I would say India has got a lot of the tier 1, but even tier 2 cities that are mature really to get this business model. Bangladesh has got a huge density of Tuk Tuks, but then Pakistan, Thailand, Vietnam, you name them, they are all potential markets. Even Egypt, over the last 10 years, has had an explosion of the use of Tuk Tuks, and likewise Nigeria. So there are a lot of countries that are very interesting, but it will really depend on where the market moves in the next year. In some cases, it might be driven also by the availability of credit for the drivers. So we're also speaking to microcredit institutions to be our partners and support the purchase of the vehicles themselves. But in some cases, in the case of Sri Lanka, one thing that we're trying to lobby the government to do is to provide guarantees to the banks on the loans, because the default rates of drivers is so low that a guarantee given to the banks is a very cheap way to support the business model. And at the same time, the benefits for the country in terms of the hemorrhage of cash that I mentioned before, the reduced problems with pollution and so on, or generally the better happiness of drivers and their families, it's frankly something that should be enough to convince them really to do something better.
That's a key point. If you can facilitate the buy of the Tuk Tuk via credit, loan, leasing, this would be great. Also because I don't know how bankable can be drivers in Sri Lanka, but not only Sri Lanka. That's a very complicated matter. So facilitating would be a big deal to push ahead your business model, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have covered almost everything. If you want to close with something more, Corrado, please do it. And after we can close this call. And please, if you want to give some more intro to your business or telling something more in terms of the funding to investors who are watching this, please.
Look, first of all, thank you again for the opportunity for today's call.
Thank you.
I would say, Kelly, we are looking for investors. So if anyone is interested, just please feel free to give me a call and contact me through the system at EquityMatch, or look for us on U2Kinternational.com. We are a business that has the opportunity to really make an impact and a positive impact for a lot of countries and a lot of people. So it's not just the clean tech or electric mobility, it's the impact really that we can make. So we should be appealing to different investors, but at this stage it has to be investors that will be keen on early stage. So we are ready to start, but we have to start. So I've had conversations with people who said, "Oh yeah, fantastic, but we only invest in those who have already started." Well,
yeah, that's common.
I didn't hide that's exactly where we are.
That's common. Everyone has to start one day. Thank you, Corrado. Anyway, U2K, the profile is possible to find on EquityMatch.co, and we also will give this video on our homepage for everyone who wants to watch the video. And again, good luck, Corrado, and hope we can have another conversation next month or the month coming.
Absolutely. Good luck for EquityMatch too.
Thank you, Corrado. Thank you so much. Have a good day.